The skies over the Middle East keep getting busier, and the easy move is to start counting. Several hundred combat jets, nearly 100 airborne fuel trucks, 2 carrier strike groups sitting offshore. Add it up and you get the obvious headline: something huge is coming. You probably already have a guess where. There's a mountain in central Iran, one analyst's nicknamed Pickaxe, a suspected nuclear site buried so deep under solid rock that most of the US arsenal can't reach it. Is all this the run-up to one strike on that mountain? Hold that thought. We're not going to answer it here, and honestly, by the end you might decide the number itself was the misleading part. Look at one flight instead. 2 aircraft take off from a base in Arizona, cross the entire Atlantic, and slot into formation with everything else. They're not bombers, they're not fighters. They're a pair of Gulfstream business jets, the kind a CEO might fly, loaded with classified electronics and flown 5,000 miles just to stand in a lineup of war machines. That's the strange part of this whole buildup. Almost nothing in it repeats. It isn't a stack of copies of one great airplane. It's a deliberately mismatched roster, built piece by piece. Now, to be clear before we go further, this isn't nearly every aircraft the US military owns. It's a fraction of the total fleet. But it's an unusually wide slice of that fleet. Dozens of different airframes pulled from bases and carriers scattered across the globe, and that's what makes it worth breaking down. So maybe the real question was never how many aircraft showed up. It's why so many different kinds did. Each one solves a physics problem the plane parked next to it can't touch. Count the sky and you get a headline. Break it down machine by machine, and somewhere on that list you get your answer about the mountain. Start with a rule no aircraft has ever escaped. Every military plane ever built signs an invisible contract, and no engineer has found the loophole yet. Stealth, heavy payload, long range, and enough force to punch through rock. You don't get all 4 on one airframe. Buy one and you're paying for it with another. Stealth costs payload, since a shape built to disappear from radar has no room left for a heavy bomb load. Payload costs survivability, because anything big enough to carry a lot is too visible to hide. Range costs speed, and speed costs fuel. Pick a lane, and the design built around it locks every other door. This isn't a budget problem or a lack of ambition. It's physics closing doors the moment you open one. So, when a campaign runs into more than one kind of problem, and it always does, a single aircraft can't cover it. You need something different tuned to each job, and none of them will look alike because each one paid for its specialty by giving something else up. A crowded sky isn't a flex, it's a tally of how many separate demands are landing in the same window. That reframes the whole picture. The length of the roster doesn't measure how much power got assembled. It measures how wide the problem has grown. And the cleanest way through the list is by the quiet job each aircraft holds, not by how sharp it looks on camera. There are 3 of those jobs, 3 groups the whole force sorts into. Only the first one ever makes the news. That first group is what most people picture when they hear air power, the aircraft that actually deliver weapons. And the first lesson lands fast. Even inside this group, no single plane can carry the whole load. The job already splits 4 or 5 ways, and each split is its own trade. The F-16 Wild Weasel exists to get shot at on purpose. It baits a missile site into lighting up its radar, then kills it with an AGM-88 Harm that rides the signal home. No stealth, no heavy payload, both traded for one dangerous specialty. The F-35 sits near the opposite end, about as close as this lineup gets to an all-purpose weapon. Stealthy, sensor-rich, able to map an enemy's radar from inside contested airspace. And precisely because it's the closest thing to universal, it proves the rule best. Stay stealthy and your bay holds 2 weapons tops, so no bomber's worth of ordnance, no bunker buster, no long-range jamming. Versatile isn't the same as universal. The F-22 gave up bombs almost entirely to own the sky and keep it clean. Not a striker, but the aircraft that keeps everything else from getting touched.
And the F-15E Strike Eagle is the fighter fleet's workhorse, a bomb truck that hauls serious ordnance deep and drops it precisely on hardened targets, flying from a forward base close enough to keep the pressure constant. Now the two heaviest hitters, because together they teach the sharpest lesson in this whole story. The B-1B is a bomb truck in the purest sense, 75,000 pounds of ordnance, the largest internal payload of any bomber in the fleet, enough for 84 Mark 82s or 22 GBU-31 JDAMs in one pass at supersonic speed. No stealth here either, but unlike the fighters, it accepts that risk up close. A strategic bomber is too big, too rare, and too expensive to park inside missile range, so it flies from a base in England and lets range do the work a stealth shape can't. A forward-based fighter eats frontline risk. A heavy bomber stays out of reach on purpose. Next to it sits the machine built for a problem the B-1 can't touch at all, the B-2, the only aircraft on the planet that can carry the 30,000-pound GBU-57 bunker buster, and even then, only two at a time. That bomb punches through roughly 200 feet of concrete, less through solid granite, well short of the roughly 300 feet of rock a target like Pickaxe Mountain is thought to sit under. But it's the closest thing that exists. For anything buried that deep, the rest of American air power is basically beside the point. One airframe, one bomb is the only answer that even comes close. Those two bombers sit at opposite ends of a single question: where does the energy go? The B-1B spreads it thin across a wide surface, dozens of Mark 82s going shallow across a footprint, the right call for something broad and exposed, a depot, a camp, launchers sitting in the open. The B-2's GBU-57 does the reverse. It packs all 30,000 pounds into a dense steel spike built to punch through before it detonates. Most of its weight isn't even explosive, it's casing, because going deep is a problem of kinetic energy through a narrow cross-section, not blast radius. Its energy runs straight down a line into the earth, the right answer for something small and buried. A whole squadron of B-1Bs unloading on the top of a mountain wouldn't do much to scuff the surface. Not 1 ounce would reach a room 300 feet down. So the real question was never how many bombs, it was always where you want the energy, spread across an acre or driven into a single point hundreds of feet underground. And no airframe bends far enough to cover both, which is exactly why you bring both bombers. But every plane in that group, the decoy, the driller, the bomb truck, is dead weight without a second group entirely, and not one aircraft in that group carries a weapon at all. This is the half of the force that fires nothing and still decides whether the sharp end gets to exist. Start with the tankers, the KC-135 Stratotankers and the newer KC-46 Pegasus, close to 100 of them, the flying gas stations anchoring this whole picture. A fighter's combat radius is set by a simple ratio: fuel carried against fuel burned. From a base held back beyond enemy missile range, the round trip into Iran and out runs longer than that ratio allows. The fighter flames out before it gets home. You can't just build bigger tanks in either, because internal fuel competes with everything else the airframe was optimized for. On a stealth jet, space spent on fuel is space stolen from the shape that hides it. The cheap fix is leaving the airframe alone and adding fuel in the air instead. That's the whole job. Meet the fighters in safe airspace, top them off, and turn a short-range jet into a long-range one without touching a single rivet. It never fires a shot, and pull it out of the picture anyway, and the most advanced fighters on Earth are just expensive lawn ornaments.
Then there's the machine going after the enemy's eyes and ears, working the same target as the Wild Weasel, but from the other direction entirely. Where the F-16 kills a radar with a missile, the EA-37B beats it with physics. A radar finds its target through the faint sliver of its own signal bouncing back, and that echo is brutally weak. Radar energy fades with the fourth power of distance going out, then the fourth power again coming back. A jammer only has to cross that distance once.
So it sits at the edge of hostile airspace, well outside missile range, and floods the radar's frequency with enough noise to drown the real echo. It destroys nothing, it just wins the signal-to-noise fight, and a radar that can't hear its own echo is functionally blind. That's the cleanest proof of the whole idea. Killing a radar with a missile and blinding one with a wave are two different answers to the same problem, split across two different aircraft, because no single machine does both well. That same logic saves the oldest aircraft in the theater. The A-10 is a Cold War design built to kill tanks, an airframe 50 years older than the stealth jets around it. Slow, unstealthy, fragile against a modern missile, and by every metric that flatters a new fighter, overdue for retirement. It stays anyway because it still does one job cheaper than anything newer. Low, close support from a frame wrapped in titanium armor, tough enough to take a hit and keep flying. Its weakness has always been modern air defenses, the exact threat the weasels get sent to clear. So on this deployment, it carries the same jamming trick in a pod, an adaptive jammer called Angry Kitten that learns and blocks enemy frequencies mid-flight. An old frame handed a new answer to the one weakness that decades stacked against it. Behind both of these sit the aircraft that see and connect everything, and they earn their spot through one blunt fact of geometry. Put a sensor or a radio higher up, and it reaches farther over the horizon. So the E-3G AWACS and the E-11A Balena fly high to hold a radar picture and a data link across hundreds of miles of battle space, while the P-8A Poseidon works the water underneath. Together, they're the theater's nervous system. Cut it, and every sharp point in the striking group goes blind and mute. Strip away the assumption that a weapon has to fire something, and you find that half this force fires nothing at all, and that half decides whether the other half exists in any meaningful way. 100 tankers, 0 rounds fired between them, and they're one of the most decisive assets in the whole theater. Call that support, and you've already misread it. It's the precondition the strike is built on. But the sharp end and the invisible half both need somewhere to launch from, and that ground is exactly what thousands of Iranian missiles are aimed at. Which brings in the third group, the part of the force that keeps everything alive and gives it somewhere to stand. Everything above amounts to nothing until two more problems get solved. The force has to survive the incoming before it can strike at all, and it needs a base close enough to the fight without already sitting in someone's crosshairs. Neither is a matter of resolve, both are engineering. Survival comes first, the shield. Iran has thrown thousands of ballistic missiles and one-way drones at bases across the theater, and the math favors the attacker. A Gulf base sits close enough that a ballistic launch gives under 5 minutes from launch to impact, nowhere near enough time to guarantee a clean intercept. So the answer is layered defense, each tier buying back a few seconds. THAAD up high, Patriot underneath, Aegis-equipped ships at sea. But the arithmetic is brutal. The force has already burned through a large share of the global interceptor stockpile, by some estimates close to half, spending interceptors that cost many times more than the cheap drones they're shooting down. That's a losing trade round for round, and no magazine survives that forever. Which is exactly why the B-1B pulls a second job here. It earned its place spreading energy across a wide area, but it also solves the magazine problem, because a plain Mark 82 gravity bomb costs a fraction of a guided JASSM or Tomahawk. When the precision stockpile runs thin, dumb bombs off a heavy bomber keep the tempo up without burning through the smart rounds. One airframe covering 2 jobs. It still can't touch anything buried under a mountain though, which is exactly why the B-2 isn't optional. One frame can cover more than one problem. No frame covers them all. Now the ground itself. A base that can't move is just a set of coordinates sitting in someone's targeting computer, solved once and solved forever. Break that by making the runway move instead. That's the job of the two carriers offshore, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS George H. Bush. A carrier like either one cruises past 30 knots, so the patch of ocean it could be hiding in grows by hundreds of square miles for every hour since it was last spotted. To hit it, the enemy has to find it again, every single time, inside a window that keeps getting wider. That's the entire trick behind 4.5 acres of floating flight deck. Not armor, but the simple refusal to sit still enough to become a coordinate. Off it fly the naval aircraft built for exactly that deck, the FA-18EF Super Hornet, the carrier variant F-35C, the EA-18G Growler, the E-2D Hawkeye, each one trading a bit of range and payload for the strength to survive a catapult shot and an arrested landing. The moving runway doesn't replace the land base, though. It solves a problem the land base can't. Fixed ground buys the long runways, the deep magazines, and a sortie rate no carrier deck can match, which is exactly why the heaviest aircraft still fly from land. The carrier buys presence you can put anywhere and then hide, and pays for it in aircraft count and total weight thrown down range, another trade, not a clean winner. It plays out like a sniper's shot. Everyone watches the round leave the barrel, but that shot only exists because of the footing under the shooter and the cover overhead. Here, the footing is a 100,000-ton airfield that swims, and the cover is a magazine of interceptors worth more box than what they're stopping. So set aside the idea that the strike wins the war and something quieter comes into view. Most of the costliest hardware in this theater never came to attack anything at all. It came to keep the force standing and to give it a place to stand from. Line all three groups up side by side, and how many aircraft stops meaning anything. Every machine got added to this pile for the same basic reason: more reach, more ability to blind an enemy, more cover overhead. Now read that same list backwards, and it says something none of the three groups could tell you alone. Every strength bolted onto the force is also a new condition placed on it. One more thing that has to work before anything else matters. A force good at exactly one thing has a single point of failure, and the enemy needs one answer to shut it down. A force good at 10 things solves 10 problems, which is real strength, but now it's leaning on 10 separate links, and a strike only lands if the tanker showed up, the jammer worked, and the shield held. The same roster that reads forward as a list of capabilities reads backwards as a list of things that can't be allowed to fail. Diversity buys the ability to solve more problems and pays for it in fragility. Same rope, read in two directions, which is exactly why that crowded sky from the opening reads so differently now. It was never a measurement of raw strength. It's a map of how many separate things all have to keep working at the same time, without a single one slipping. Go back to that pair of Gulf Streams, 5,000 miles from home, sliding into a sky thick with bombers and fighters and tankers. At first, they looked out of place. Now you can see exactly why they belong. They answer something no fighter and no bomber can answer on its own. And every other shape in that sky is up there for the same reason, each one holding up a corner nothing else can. This was never about one weapon, and it was never really about the count. It's the answer to a single question. How many different physics problems have to be solved at once? The length of the answer is the size of the question. Which brings us back to where we started, whether all of this is really the buildup to one strike on Pickaxe Mountain. Weigh it yourself now that you know how to read the sky. Every aircraft up there would be needed to reach a target buried under a mountain, and every one of them is also needed for a dozen jobs that have nothing to do with it. The hardware serves both purposes at once, so it won't settle the question for you. Whether the mountain is the actual target lives in someone's head, not in the formation. That part is yours to sit with. And that's how the number lied. Counting the aircraft told you the force was big. It couldn't tell you the force was diverse, and diversity is the whole story here. which leaves one question worth carrying out of all this. A force whose strength comes from how many different links it can chain together. Is that stronger than a simple one, or more fragile? The very thing that lets it answer every problem at once is the same thing handing it that many more places to break. No amount of counting aircraft will ever tell you which one you're actually looking at.